and you are quick on the trigger.
Yeah?
Yeah, you logged in and the phone was ringing.
Hey man, I was running a couple minutes late, but I was just trying to keep the pressure off you from always trying to feel like you have to be on time. So I was trying to, hopefully help you deal with that a little bit easier.
I am under a lot of pressure, man.
I know you are.
I'm feeling the pressure. I don't know where it's coming from, man. It's
I know where it's coming from. It's coming from you.
Oh yeah. It's self-imposed.
Yeah, I think that's self-imposed pressure, which is pretty much 99.9% of pressure in the sport of triathlon.
All right, and that's a wrap.
And that's a wrap. All right. Happy Mother's Day to all the mothers out there. Please don't forget to like our Crushing Iron Facebook page. And if you want to be part of the conversation, join our Crushing Iron closed Facebook group. And don't forget to be awesome and leave us a review on iTunes.
Right on. And get out of your heads.
Get out of your heads. Talk to you later.
Get out of your own way. That's what's going on, man.
I know, man. So let's give a little context.
No context.
Yeah, because about how yesterday went and where you are mentally and let's just dive in.
Yeah, let's dive in. Okay, let's start with my race yesterday, which was I looked at it as a warm up. It was an open water swim race, 2.5K. Which,
all right, so let's go back to our previous podcast. Is this something you would call a race, or you would call an event you were participating in?
Oh, geez, man, this is a lot of pressure. Again.
Again.
A lot more pressure, man. Well, this is how I was looking at it. Because I haven't really, A, been in open water, and B, haven't really gone that distance maybe once. And certainly not continuous. So I was looking at it as, all right, I'm gonna race this if I'm feeling it. How's
okay.
that?
Yeah. Oh yeah, that makes sense. I like that. I like that approach.
Yeah. So I was going to. I got a good warm up in. I did the land warm up, and then I actually got in the water it was probably 5 minutes, but still, and that's more than I usually get. So I felt pretty good. And I thought I would take off it at my slower pace, because that's usually how I do it. I didn't race to the front or any of that kind of business, because it wasn't that packed for one. But so I just kind of went with it, and I don't know when it dawned on me that, because I was like, well, this is a great replicator of a 1.2 half Ironman distance. And at some point, I think it was about 1.2 miles into the swim, that I realized that 0.3 more miles is actually about 500 or 600 yards.
Yep.
And that's about when it started going to hell. So, and of course, that last 500 was across the channel, and it wasn't super rough, but it was rough enough where every time I breathed, a wave went into my mouth. So
sure.
It was a great test, but the reality of it is, I was fighting. I was a little tired at the end of that thing, and I felt okay afterwards. But a little bit after that, I realized that it had wiped me out. Now, the other thing I did as a pre-race plan was get no sleep. So
another good decision.
Yeah, it was. Yeah, it was pretty bad. I don't know. I get amped before these races, and I don't sleep well anyway. So it's like it was just a bad night of very little sleep for me. So that day after the race was kind of a big wake up call. And what also happened, I wanted to ask you about this actually, was I got so congested after that race. I know that sometimes that happens when you swim a little bit, but
yeah, it does.
But I was wondering. Since the allergies, and I don't like to admit to having allergies, but I actually do sometimes. So, but I was wondering if sometimes the pollen or the stuff can settle in a lake. Can it actually be a deal?
I don't think so. I've never heard of that. I mean, I know that for me personally, like anytime I'm in any kind of water, I think it naturally flushes out any like excess mucus or drainage. Just kind of just like, because you get water up there, and I think it just kind of loosens everything up. But I'm not sure that you would get any residual pollen from the surface of the water to cause any kind of like allergic explosion or anything.
Yeah, and you're probably right. It was a combination of that flushing activity, which I normally have after a good swim. You kind of get the mucus kind of thing. But
yeah, I like it. That's why I like to go swim when I have any kind of like congestion, because I just feel like it like clears me out.
I do too. But last night after the race, my sinuses were that in complete clogged mode. I didn't really feel like it was. It was almost like a swelling more than anything. When you can't breathe, and I didn't really have a lot of mucus per se. But I definitely had that. Was it maybe the pressure of being in water or something? I don't know. But anyway, the long story short, it was a little bit of a bummer because I thought I was doing pretty well with my swims and I thought I was kind of ready. But it was a wake-up call. So now, for me, the question goes: how can you take what I would consider what that would be sort of as a bad workout leading into my race this weekend, and shift that in my mind in a sense of like make it a positive,
Well, I mean, all right, that's kind of a tough one to reframe, because I don't know that you can turn that a specific event into a positive. But I think you can use it to kind of catapult your thinking for the remainder of your taper week. And I always like to ask any athlete, whether I'm coaching them or not, like, where do you get your expectations from? And what makes you believe this time is even realistic or that you have done the work to deserve this time? Like, I think I can average a 1 this. I'm like, hey, where did you get that number from? And then let's work our way backwards. And sometimes they have a legitimate answer that's backed by data and training and frequency and consistency, and then sometimes it's just like, well, I feel like that's kind of what I'm able to do.
Yeah.
And when you get into long distance triathlon or any sport in general, that's when it's the importance of being able to kind of being in touch with your body and perceived exertion and effort and being kind of your body's own governor comes into just it's an invaluable tool to have. And I would put this in kind of the same bucket of not maybe turning it into a positive, but okay, because everybody has bad workouts. And most of the athletes that I know at least have one just terrible workout the last like 2 weeks before their big race, where they're just like it causes them to like question everything. Yeah. And when it's totally normal, because the closer you get to a race, everything is heightened. Your sense of training is heightened. Your sense of pressure is heightened. Your sense of like every niggle in your body is heightened. And it's because you're getting more rest. You're feeling more recovered. And another thing people don't realize is just that like you're able to kind of like self mitigate that stress throughout the year because of how far away the event actually is. It's not like reality setting in. Well, now reality is setting in. And it's not like, well, I can get better. If I miss today, I can make it up. It's just like, oh shit! Like, I'm not going to get any faster before race day. Now I might get fitter and fresher. So what is it? So basically, you ask yourself, the first main question is what happened today, and is what happened today the anomaly? Was it based on conditions? Was it based on environment? Was it based on stress? And is this likely to happen again at race day, and why? And and that's something you have to ask for yourself or any other athlete that kind of goes into a race with these kind of looming questions. But I guess in turning it into a positive and maybe I think I mentioned this to you in text yesterday. Is maybe the silver lining, I guess, is probably the best way to put it, is that maybe you will be more conservative on the swim, maybe pace it better, maybe start slower. It might seem shorter, which I think mentally could be a benefit. But I think it's how you dissect in my opinion, you should never dissect an actual just a race from the gun off to the crossing the tape or crossing the finish line. You should also dissect the 12 hours to 24 hours before. and then what the conditions were, because that always leads, like, you didn't get a lot of sleep. You weren't prepared. You do have a mentality that's like, I can just kind of go in and I'll be fine. I'll just kind of wing it. And did that play a part in it? Or did the not realizing how much actually further you were going to have to go, did that play a huge part in it? And I think there's a lot of factors, especially with this kind of event, that you can kind of go back and look at and say, all right, this is more of the more random and more kind of, not apt to happen again than it is something that may or may not normally happen for me.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, certainly the distance, the no sleep, kind of, I wasn't taking it lightly. I mean, that's what, I'm always amped for that, and I'm always ready to go do the thing. But the extra distance, it did fool me, because I think really what happened was, and I break every rule of our podcast a lot because it's human nature. But I go into this and I'm thinking, all right, this is what I think I can swim at Chattanooga, right? And, whether that be around 34 to 36 minutes or something like that. And then I go out and do this race, which I assume was about the same distance. And then I get out of the water at 53 minutes. So that's like almost 20 minutes longer than I hope to swim at Chattanooga, when I assume it's kind of the same distance, but it's not, and it's certainly not downstream and whatever. But mentally I was like, whoa, because it took me back. I thought for sure I'd be in the 40s, And the one thing I did do during this race was I was starting to get tired, so it really kind of, I was looking at it as an advantage in the sense of it really was a nice warm-up, or something to get out in the wetsuit and do something like this a week before the race was great, because it forced me to really get into form, or like find that form where I could keep going, because it was getting hard. And so I did, use it in that way, and I think that will help, And also the idea of, we talk about coming off a race as a great training day. Well, that was a great training day for me. That was certainly my best swim training day of the spring,
Oh, yeah.
So I really have to get in on board, and I'm going to use that as a little bit of a springboard and get in the water a lot this week, because you talk about swim more than anything during the week of a race usually anyway. And so I'm going to do that. But as far as like how much and things like that, and we talk about the pressure during race week, and we've talked about the taper before, but this is how we can kind of turn these things into positives, because it's hard for people to start scaling back. And how do you stay on track and not overwork? Because like right now I would want to go out and just swim to prove I could swim, but so it's hard for people, I think, to scale back during this week when they feel pressure, like they need to prove it or something.
Yeah, I mean, I think the best weeks, or the most advantageous weeks of the entire year to have a coach, is when you taper.
Mm-hmm.
Because they're the ones that are going to tell you to not do something, or to slow down, or they're hopefully, if they're on track and kind of on pulse with your training load and stress, and they're going to already have prescribed close enough to what you need to be able to do. One less thing, everybody worries more on race week because there's so many more things to take into account. You're
right.
Traveling, you're packing, it's an unknown venue, there's 3,000 other racers, I've got packet pickup, I got to check into a hotel, is my family coming, what time are they getting there, am I boarding a flight, what time do I land, do I need to rent a car, where's transition setup, is it one transition, is it two transitions, or a pre-race swim? Like, there's just a million things to take into consideration, and planning out your own training, like, that's the most stressful part of it, because you're in that phase of, am I doing too much, am I doing too little, am I gaining weight, am I getting slower? And having a coach to pre-prescribe that and just take that off your plate can really, really alleviate that extra amount of stress for your race week. But in general, the one rule I have, basically the only rule, or one of two rules I have for race week, is never go over time on your workout, and when in doubt, take the day off.
Okay.
If it's I didn't get a lot of sleep, sleep and rest the race week trump everything. So if it's do an hour and 15-minute bike ride with 2 6-minute efforts of race pace, or it's take a nap because you haven't slept very well, then take a nap. That kind of takes precedent that week. But it's about staying sharp and keeping everything and keeping your mind and body engaged and as one. But it's also resting so they can connect and be able to function at their highest level when Saturday or Sunday rolls around. And I'll use a great example, a very similar, honestly, example to the one you gave. I had an athlete. She raced yesterday, and she sent me this huge long text message on Friday, so day before the race, and she sent me this gigantic text back after I checked in to ask her kind of how's it going, and part of her text was, well, I attempted an open water swim last night and I just couldn't do it. The water was freezing. I hate cold water, and for some reason swimming in cold water, it freaks me out. And she said she swam maybe 150 yards and then called it quits.
Mm-hmm.
But she said, I didn't want a bad experience before race day. I just don't know what got into me. I haven't had an issue like this in years. So to say that I'm nervous about tomorrow was an understatement. I'm feeling stupid and I'm not ready. And so that's the day before the race,
Wow.
not like a week before.
Yeah.
And so I texted her back and I said, tomorrow, have fun. Remind yourself why you do this in the first place, and then ask yourself 2 questions. What's the best thing that can happen, and what's the worst thing that can happen? And then choose which one you want for that day. Because I truly believe that's one of the great things of life that we actually get to choose, is when you wake up in the day and you're like, am I going to have a good day today or not? And a lot of times we just naturally have good days, but a lot of days we wake up in kind of a funk or a bad mood, and we just decide to let that control us for the rest of the day. And the same kind of goes with negative thoughts from workouts. We let it consume us. We let it control us. And we just kind of let it kind of run wild. And so I told her, I said, what are you going to choose? And she said, and she responded, she said, the best thing would be to finish feeling strong, tired, and proud. And of course, I'd like a podium spot in my age group. And which who wasn't? And the next day she won her age group.
Wow.
Less than 24 hours later. Am I going to put that all on my Dr. Phil, Tony Robbins text? No. But it does show you that you're capable of just feeling totally vulnerable and inept one day, and then the next day reality hits, and it's the reality of your ability and the work you've done. Because work consistency and work and attitude and training load always trump happenstance.
Yeah.
Not always, but the luck is on your side.
Right.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
yeah.
You're more apt for that to take control and give you the result you deserve versus some kind of an anomaly.
Yeah.
So the day before was an anomaly, but what had happened was she had put so much stress on herself to do well that so what happens is when you magnify the amount of stress and pressure that you put on your own self, anything negative is also magnified. Mm-hmm. So you turn some like minute pinch of a hole into a gaping, shipwrecked, just galvanizing catastrophe. When in reality, it's just like, oh, well, any other week of the year, I'd have been like, all right, well, I don't really give a shit, moving on. But race week, or when things are heightened, everything is magnified. Mm-hmm. And that's what happens. You just got to remind yourself that it's just another day of the year. It just happens to be within a certain window of this race that you feel is important because of whatever kind of pressure you put on yourself.
Yeah, and I think it can go the other way, and I think it probably goes the other way just as much, where people come in over confident or whatever you want.
Totally agree with you.
You know, I've seen that many times when I, especially the day before walking around and people are like, oh yeah. And then it's sort of that thing where you train this much and the odds are with you that maybe 3 out of 4 days you're going to have a good day, but that one time like she had that day before, that was her, just like you said, against the odds, but that's when it happened. But her odds are getting better because the next 3 days are probably going to be good ones or whatever. But if you overhype it, I think it goes, I think the odds even go a little bit the other way sometimes if you're a little overconfident.
Yeah, no, I mean, that is a great point. And I think that brings it to something that we always kind of preach on this podcast is never get too high, never get too low.
Mm-hmm.
And in a lot of times, people pick one of those to come into race day. You see the people that are too high, like, I've done all this work. I've done 3 marathons in the last 6 weeks. I am more than ready. Or you have these people who are like, oh, I'm totally undertrained. My work's been crazy, blah, blah, blah. And they build in excuses for the race they've already decided they're going to have. So it's no problem the next day to use those excuses because they talk themselves into this poor race with their terrible negative mentality.
Mm-hmm.
So going back to what you mentioned is it's about how you approach both. It's that self-awareness of, okay, something bad, you lose your goggles in the first. I've had this happen to me. My race at Muncie last year that I did really well, I got my goggles leaked the entire swim.
Mm-hmm.
Out of nowhere. It's the best, especially when you feel like swimming is your strength and you got to put some time in. It literally like the 5th stroke.
Now, do you stop and fix that, or you just suffer?
It depends.
Okay.
If I can barely kind of somewhat see where I'm going, I will just keep swimming.
Okay.
It really depends on what the course is like. If it's a technical course like Muncie, I would consider technical with its weird shapes and swimming into the sun. I stopped and fixed it quite a few times. But if I can see at a just one eye, then I do that. But so something like that happens, you're like, a lot of people will just kind of like, oh, well, my goggles did this or my wetsuit did this. And I'm like, dude, it's the beginning of a very long day where things are going to definitely change. It's like waking up, when you go downstairs and you spill your cup of coffee and you're like, there goes the day. And you're like, what? That's not how it works, and it works on both sides. So, it really goes back to how you approach when things are great. Humble, staying self-aware that, okay, this is great. I should appreciate it, but I should still be aware and prepared for it to go wrong. Mm-hmm. Or not maybe to go wrong, because then you're anticipating, or maybe thinking something, but it's that level of preparedness of, this is going great. I'm thankful and I'm enjoying this while it's going on. But at the same time, if something does happen, I want to be prepared for it and in a mindset that it's not going to ruin this perfect day. It's just part of the day.
Yeah.
And the same goes for the negative. Losing your goggles, it's like 2 different ends of the spectrum. You'll lose your goggles the first, minute of your race and you have to put them back on and change the leak. Or you're racing perfectly and you get to mile 12 and some, jack wagon that's in the aid station like trips you when you skid your knee. Mm-hmm. Totally different aspects of the race. One is probably going to be looked at as more detrimental, like the goggles, versus the one at the end that takes just as much time. Yet you're just closer to the finish, so for whatever reason, you just feel like you can deal with it better because it's closer. Whether they both take the same amount of time, they're both something bad that happens. It's just your frame of mind when that thing actually happens. That is ultimately, it's your just to wrap it up, this topic, or what I'm trying to say is that it's your frame of your present mind when something bad happens that dictates everything that happens next, right. Not the actual catastrophe or mistake. Right. It's you and your frame of mind that actually determines what happens next.
So obviously that that a big part of that happens race morning. But you're saying that it starts now for me. I got to get this get my head wrapped around all that stuff. At least the idea of going in with a calm, balanced attitude, period, and taking that all week. I mean, there's nothing better than having that all the time. It's not like,
oh yeah,
and that's what happens. I think a lot it's just natural that people, like you're saying, get more and more amped towards the race, and then, like I told you, it's happened to me several times where I've done that and I've been so wired up, and then you get to the race morning, and it kind of washes away because it's at that point, you're at the end of the plank and you just got to jump in. So you might as well just accept what's coming. But the advantage comes from, I think, is approaching everything that way, whether it be a workout or like I just went through and I kind of did. I think I over amplify. I mean, it's easy to over amplify it too when it crushes you, like when something beats the crap out of you and you just feel bad, like I felt bad, like I have a week to go, and last night I was like, how am I ever going to race? I feel terrible. But, that's all part of being rested and recovered and a whole week. So I just want to go into, like, that was kind of the race week sort of thing. And now if we talk about pre-race pressure, the anxieties and all the extra energy the day before, or the minute you get on site and you start checking in and everything, we kind of went over a little bit, but we know that's pressure. But there's that fine line between being pumped up and being relaxed, and how do you navigate that? Because I don't want to. You are going into a race, you know what I mean? Like, I want to get controlled energy going. I don't want to go in with like, oh well, I'll just take this easy and whatever happens either.
Let me I'm gonna answer that question. Let me ask you something first real quick. A great thing that you can do this week is probably finish that book that I sent you.
Okay. And there's a lot of good stuff in there about this.
Oh, it is the title is The Obstacle is the Way.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it is the story of the timeless art of turning trials into triumph.
Mm-hmm.
And I mean, dude, it is. I mean, not to it's whatever extent, it's all relative. And that it's definitely all about that. But anyway,
well, that puts a lot more pressure on me because now I have 2 books to read this week.
Oh, well, that's true.
Jesus,
well, I mailed you this one like months ago, so just make your choice. But no, to what you said is, I never stressed out or do stress out at like race venues or check-ins and expos, because if you think about it, it is the most least stressful thing you're actually going to do every other day of the year that you prepared for this race.
Yeah.
You don't have to work. You have minimal obligations, if any. You have a hotel room you don't have to clean. You are going to probably go out to eat. You don't have to make dinner. Your family is there to fully support you. There are lines, directions, arrows, volunteers. People hand you stuff. They write on you instead of you writing on yourselves. It's literally like check-in spa day. There are tents with like Normatec recovery boots, people giving away free stuff. It's like, why should this even be stressful? On a normal day of the week, I have to set my alarm at like 4:30. I've got to make sure I take the dogs out. I've got to fix myself breakfast. I got to make sure I got a decent amount of sleep because I got to go to work the next day. I got to do work, finish my responsibilities. If something comes up, I got to deal with it. Then I got to find time to get my workout in and still make sure I'm living up to all these other expectations over the course of the day. Find a good bedtime, fuel myself, recover, wake up the next day and do it again. Yeah. Expo day, check-in day, the 2 or 3 days before the race, it's like, all right, I'm not working. I'm either here by myself or the family that's with me is supportive and knows how big of an event this is, so I have no extra pressure. I can sleep in. I'm about as close to the race venue as you can possibly get. So, if you think about it, it's like this should be like the least stressful day before a training day ever. When it comes to logistics,
mm-hmm.
When it comes to the, being overwhelmed of what's going to happen the next day, that's totally different. But when it comes to like all the other stuff, it's like this should be pretty easy. But that should also help kind of lead you to your approach the next day.
Yeah, which is the pre-race pressure before the race and dealing. We've kind of touched on a little bit of that, but like I just have here, sometimes there's a subtle force that shifts your realistic race goals. And that morning, I don't know if the reality of staring out at a big race course, swim course, kind of has a way of humbling you. And I think that's what happens to me usually. It's like, man, you look at that thing, looks so far every time I look at it, and I never get used to it. And so you have to kind of sink back into your reality circle, I guess, or your reality space. And then, there's something about that can kind of take away some of that anxiety from me. But I also, the pre-race thing, I also wanted to, if there is a lot of it going on in your world, I think that the one thing that it's easy to start forgetting about is just getting caught up in like talking to people and stuff and not thinking about getting warmed up for the race. Because, I heard some guy say yesterday, well, the first, 500 yards are my warm-up in the swim. And I guess that can work, but if you can't literally control that in a warm-up sense, it's going to backfire. So I personally, I just think that's probably one of the most underrated things about doing a race is the warm-up, because you end up starting faster than you should, and your body's not ready for it, and it takes a long time to adjust. So, I mean, are you in that camp? I mean, I don't know where you are as far as warming up, and it's within reason. Sometimes you can't get in the water, of course, but...
Yeah, a lot of times you can't get in the water. But I think it's vital to surround yourself with people who aren't going to be like overly nervous and anxious and torn apart, and like look at people who are inexperienced, cool, calm, and collected, because that always transfers, in my opinion. That's why I've always avoided race the like pasta preload carb fest dinner the night before with like the athlete meeting check-in dinner, because it's so much nervous energy. I'm a firm believer that energy is transferable between one person to another, and you can't help but overhear every other person's race day plan, what they use, how far they train, how little they train, what they heard about the course, where this turns in. Have you heard about the railroad tracks? Are you going to pop a tire? Or what race nutrition are you carrying? Well, I use this, or I use that. And then you automatically begin to question, unconsciously, everything that you've done.
The seeds are planted.
Exactly. Yeah. Once you walk into the field and the wind blows, seeds plant themselves. And you can't do anything about it. So that's why I avoid stuff like that by the plague. I like to kind of sit or do stuff like we've always done in the past, to just kind of get together ourselves and have dinner and reflect and kind of be loose, and you're going to have nervous energy, but it's contained. and I find it much more manageable in that type of situation than the chaos that is that like carnival setting of the athlete dinner.
Yeah. And we tend to make a mockery of ourselves a lot more too. I think it's kind of like joking around about the big hill, and and I think that takes an edge off of it. Or we just talk about sort of like maybe some simple course strategies, but we don't get too deep. And I agree with you. It can be overwhelming when groups overwhelm me anyway. So if you can kind of tone that down and reel in a like-minded group of thinkers, I think that goes a long way.
I totally agree. Yeah,
in the morning and at night and in the morning.
Oh, for sure. Yeah, the morning is like the worst. I used to in the past, and then when I first got into the sport, I was the guy with like the earphones in, music, not getting amped, but just like kind of getting ready and mentally preparing. What I found that did for me was it got me. I don't want to say it got me too ready, but it got my energy like flowing already that I should have been saving. like I was projecting energy and effort into being, prepared already and in the zone, when reality was I was like, I should have been saving it. Now what I do is I don't listen to anything. And I'm more chatty the morning of than I ever am before in like any other circumstance. Like I'll talk to like beginners or like people or crack jokes, anything to kind of help me feel loose and take my mind away from self and towards somebody else. Like, oh, is this your first one? Oh no, man, there's plenty of time. Like, do you have any advice? Sure, man, I'm happy to give it to you. Have fun, and not that I'm being a servant, but doing whatever I can to take it away from like out of my own mind and into talking or, being around or projecting positive energy towards other people.
That's a good thing. There's no doubt about it, because a lot of times you can bottle that up if you're not talking or conversing or whatever, and that's sort of why I don't even, I drink a lot of coffee normally, but like usually on race morning I try to resist as much as I can, because I feel like if getting in a body of cold water with thousands of other people doesn't wake you up, then nothing's going to wake you up. You know what I mean? Like,
Yep.
Like coffee is an external stimulant that I don't really need in my morning. So I think it's kind of that same thing. And I find like I race better if I didn't. Actually, I probably drank too much coffee before that swim the other day too. So it was kind of a test in that regard. But so going into the actual race, and you've already talked about this a little bit, but like with the goggles and how to handle something that goes wrong early and not let it affect your race, because it is a long race. And I've heard, I can't tell you how many times I've heard somebody say, yeah, some guy hit me in the head and it threw my whole race off, like on the 8th stroke.
Right.
It's like, that seems like the most common theme. Yeah, I got clocked in the jaw while I was swimming, and I was just, like out of it mentally from that point on. And if you're out of it, like concussion-wise, I get that. But if it's something that startles you or you're going to let impact your race, that can be troublesome, because like you said, it is a long day. That's just the beginning, and it's just sort of that concept of swimming is sort of the warm-up for the race. It's bad and it's good. Like some people don't take swimming seriously enough, as we've talked about many times, but certainly it is the warm-up for the race. If you warm up a little harder than somebody and swim harder, then you're probably going to have better chances of getting a medal or a podium or something like that. But for 99% of the people, you got to take that as a realistic thing and not let something that happens within the first 100 yards throw you off for the rest of the day. So that goes into this, how do you stay focused in your box?
That's I think that's going to be like per individual based on just their experience, because I think different things work for different people. And talking to people, for some people, might be more nerve-wracking. But I think it's one of those things, like find something that, like I think I mentioned before, for a lot of people, they listen to like non-sport specific podcasts because it takes them away from self and their whatever into like almost off to kind of like La La Land. But since it's a podcast and you're listening intently, it keeps you engaged.
Right.
No, but not necessarily with the focus of projecting energy or creating like extra anxiety based on your surroundings.
Yeah. Well, I'm mainly talking now. I'm kind of shifted into the actual race once the gun goes off. How you can stay in your box mentally. I'll use to kind of give you like a little teaser from the book I'm telling you to read. One of my favorite quotes from that book was, focus on the moment, not the monsters that may or may not be up ahead. Because a lot of athletes that are, I always use this as an example, but like athletes who are not very confident in their tire changing ability will literally stress out about it the whole bike ride. What if I flat, or is this bump going to be the flat, or is this like, you're going to worry yourself into affecting yourself negatively, even if something negative doesn't happen. Yeah.
And we do that in life. all the time. Like we worry and obsess so much that we may or may not think something into existence, but we can feel the ramifications of something that has never happened based on our obsession of is it? So you go ahead and feel as if it has happened, as if to like prepare yourself so when it does, I'll already be feeling this way. When the reality is, it might not happen, and the chances are it's not going to happen.
Yeah.
Like my sponsor always says, don't live in a problem that doesn't exist.
Yeah.
And we do it all the time. We do it during racing. We do it during, we do it all the time. So, I think that's kind of the best way to do it. Maybe finding something that you tell yourself or remind yourself to kind of keep yourself in the moment. It's probably a good, safe way to go.
Yeah. The things that I've known, but I keep relearning, are simple ones to me. Like when you start a race, you're not at peak swim capacity. You're warming up. You're starting. For most people, I think if you have some of these guys that want to bust out and they're great swimmers or whatever, but for most people like me, it takes you a while to get into the place where you're going to be swimming your best, a couple hundred yards, 5 minutes, whatever it may be. Same goes for your bike and your run. And I always forget about that. I start, that goes into this, like something going wrong, quote unquote, early is like, oh, you just started your swim and you don't feel good. Well, you're probably going to feel good in about 10 minutes, but
yeah, exactly.
But don't let that initial feeling crush you. And same with the bike and same with the run. I've been really focused on that lately, as in if I get out there and I'm 15 minutes into my ride, I'm like, I just don't feel it today. Well, you're not there yet. Your muscles and your blood and everything isn't rolling. Same with the run. The run for me is about 1.5 miles or 2 miles these days, where it's that initial, God, I feel terrible running. But then your legs just sort of like figure it out at mile 2. And all of a sudden you're doing your thing if you're staying to your game plan. You know what I mean? If you're not going out too hard. And that's the other point.
I mean, generally, even for me, like my least favorite, almost like most painful minutes of the entire race are the first 2 or 3 minutes of each segment.
Yeah.
The first 2 or 3 minutes I swim, when I'm getting all the blood into my arms, it hurts. And I'm like, okay, it hurts now. How am I going to be able to survive this?
Exactly. That's what I mean.
Even though I've done it so many times and I'm an experienced swimmer, the thought still crosses my mind. The bike, same thing. Get out of the water. Your blood's still moving. Get on the bike, and you're like, I'm like pedaling hard and it hurts, and I'm going 11 miles an hour.
Yep.
This is going to be a long day. And then I get off the bike, in my bike shoes to run, put my bike up, and I'm like, how am I going to make these things work for the next, 13 miles to 26 miles? But it always passes, and it always gets better. So,
it's incredible how we can forget that every time.
Oh yeah, forget every time. And honestly, like I honestly think about quitting every single race.
Yeah. Oh.
Every single race, I think about quitting. It just crosses my mind, whether it's I'm hurting so bad or I've put so much pressure on myself. But I'm like, you think of this crap all the time. Moving on. And then you go on to the next thing. So yeah, it's totally normal, and I think it happens. So I agree.
Okay. And then one little thing here about in-race pressures, because I think it's an important one that I want to touch on, is resisting the desire to keep up with others, and basically, how to stay in your race, because it's so easy, man. From
so
the swim
easy.
on, some guys, some girl, she swims right by you, and you're like, man, I should be faster than this, and they're just cruising right by. You have to understand, I think, that all levels of talent in certain disciplines aren't created equally, and that's something that can ruin your race in a hurry if you try to stay up with the wrong people. Oh
yeah, I mean it's the hardest thing to do, and the the ruiner of so many races is keeping up with the Joneses. Has ruined more races than probably anything else. And unrealistic expectations, which are usually like, came from keeping up with the Joneses. And so, it's the commitment and dedication to under no circumstance am I going to deviate from my race plan to chase somebody else's race.
Yeah.
And that's something you have to dictate on, and actually, in my opinion, practice weeks and months before the race even happens. And you do it in training, you do it in practice races, and if you can't do it then, on the dimmest and smallest of stages, how do you expect to do it on the brightest and the biggest of stages?
Yeah.
When your needs and internal motivators are going to, even like on such a different level, going to want you to chase the Joneses in their race versus your race.
Yeah. It's probably a pretty good, everybody talks about what in Ironman the race doesn't start till mile 18 or something, or is that kind of the thing? And in a half, let's say that's mile 9 or whatever. I don't know what the equivalent is, but that should be sort of a mantra, is like never try to keep up with the Joneses until mile 18. It's like because then it's you can kind of risk a few things or whatever like that. But for me, it's easy enough. Is really it just comes down to my breath. If I feel like I'm breathing too hard or too often, I just sort of pay attention to that sort of thing. If I start running with somebody and I'm breathing like hard, I know I'm in trouble. And I have a thing I work on where I sort of I'm so big on this internal power meter self-calibration topic that for me it's like every 6 strides running is a normal breathe pattern for me, in and out.
Yeah.
And if it starts getting into the 4 area, I know I'm in short term range for keeping that sort of pace. So those are the kind of things I think about when I'm out running. And cycling, I still got to work on that one.
Got it.
It's tough.
It is a tough one.
That's why I suppose I should have a power meter. But me and my Chrissy Wellington.
I hear you, man. I hear you.
All right, so I guess that means that we're going to wrap up this Crushing Iron podcast on race pressure.
Yeah.
And
no pressure.
No, and then I'm going to implement it right now. Like the minute I get off. I can't get to it soon enough.
Boom.
Boom. Man, stop. Because we're getting too many booms. Join our closed Facebook group where they're throwing a lot of booms and epics around in there right now. It's kind of a fun thing, but that'll fade away.
It better, or they're going to get banned. Yeah,
that's going to be up on the new bylaws soon.
Yeah. Coming out soon. I've committed to posting and pinning our forum rules and regulations when we reach our 100th forum member.
Ooh, and it's going to get tight, huh?
Yeah. Then it may just be like invite only. I want to protect the sanctity of this great diamond in the rough that is the Crushing Iron Facebook closed group.
That is really something. And I suggested the other day through text that we make CC the Sergeant at Arms, but he is afraid that he would ban himself.
Yeah, he'd ban himself, and he's looking at retiring here in the next 8 or 9 days anyway. So, he'll just be on there to ban people, for themselves. So,
should I just let him win so he keeps the enthusiasm?
Don't start with that, man, because then you're just building in excuses. Don't be starting that, man. Don't start building in excuses.
Oh, man. But it's just like, it's just a race, and he's a good friend, and I don't want to do that.
Hey, if you let him win, maybe he'll, consider moving back.
If it's that simple, I don't know. I'm just a little too competitive, man. I
was going to say, man, you're not going to, it's like me letting my kid win at checkers just for the sake of letting him win. Like, that's not going to happen.
I'm already kind of kicking around what I'm going to say to him when I pass him on the bike.
Oh. Hey, passes on the bike are rarely definite. Passes on the run are definite.
You're right. You're so right. All right. I don't think I can pass him on the run. That's the problem.
Always remember that, people. Bike for show, run for dough.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. So don't start popping off on the bike, in other words.
Yeah, for real. Yeah, that's as I told one of my other athletes that's racing next weekend, I said, your number one goal. Oh, you have 2 goals for Chattanooga 70.3. That's it. Just 2. One is to not get passed at all on the run, and 2, don't walk an inch of that course. Whoa. And if you can do both of those things, then I guarantee you will achieve your goal.
Wow.
So we'll see.
By anybody, huh?
Yeah, by anybody.
Thank you for not giving me that one.
Oh, I wouldn't dare.
So we're not sure what the next cast is, but we think we might know. But we're not going to say it. But the one after that, we're going to be recording live in Chattanooga. Live from Chattanooga. We're going to start trying to do some live stuff on Facebook, maybe.
Yeah, I don't know how that works.
Well, we got to figure it out. That's why we got all these brilliant tech people around us.
Yeah, not me.
Not me either. But we'll set up we can turn on the phone, and they can make it happen.
Yeah, whatever that needs to happen or figure out, we can definitely do that.
But yeah, so please, if you're anywhere near the southeast, come on down to Ironman 70.3 Chattanooga, and we're all going to be hanging out.
Mm-hmm. Having some fun, crushing some iron.
Okay. Well, thank you for this wonderful podcast.
Yeah, happy Mother's Day to my mom out there, my beautiful wife Allie, who won't listen to this for another couple weeks, but had to sneak it in.
Okay, and happy Mother's Day to my mother, who will never listen to this. And my
sister.
That's so
disappointing from both of them.
I know. She said they're too long.
All right, fine.
Maybe maybe we could have Momcast.
Some people want them too short. Some people want them longer.
I know.
We can't please everybody.
We'll just listen to a little bit if it's too long. That's the way I look at it.
Okay,
we can do Momcasts. We can make those real short. Hi Mom, I'm doing fine, and I'm not, in trouble.
At the moment.
It's beautiful.
At the moment.
Okay, and now we'll wrap it up.
All right, man. I'll talk to you soon.
All right, buddy. See ya.